Hello and welcome to a new video, and in this video we're going to be doing a little how to get started in Core. I'll get to explaining what Core is very shortly, but just up front, I'll let you all know this is a sponsored video. It's not a sponsored review, this is a how-to video, but it is a how-to video that I've been paid to make. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So this is Core. For those of you who don't know, you can think of it as kind of like a Roblox or a Garry's Mod type game, but a lot better looking. It's made in Unreal as far as I know. It looks, it's very Fortnite-y, very slick. So if I press spacebar, it'll drop us into the Core hub where you can look around. I've already made a little character. You can go through portals to different worlds, you can talk to people, you can socialize. That's not what we're here for. We're here for the game making part of things. So if I press escape, you can also look for games a more traditional way there. This is your character creator, and obviously a shop, but the create thing is where we're really interested in. So I've got a few projects here where I've just been messing around getting used to things, but I'm going to create a new project and we'll just go through some basics. So I'm gonna start an empty one, and I mean the layout is more or less what you'd expect from any sort of game engine. Now the thing about Core is you don't need any code whatsoever. You can code, there is options for creating code of your own, but you don't need it, and you can do a surprising amount without having to type in your own code. So for example, let's create, we go up to here, there's a terrain generator. So let's create some terrain. Desert dune, yeah, let's go with desert dunes. So straight away it generates desert dunes, and the terrain generation in this is quite good. I've played around with a few different ones, and yeah, I'm impressed. So what we can do now is we can go down to the Core community objects, art objects down here. There's 3D objects, obviously models and stuff like that, 3D text, animated meshes. What we want is materials, and in materials you've got all the materials, and you can search in here. So I'm just going to search for sand. We've got sand and sand waves, so let's go with sand waves, and literally drag the material onto the object. You can go to the terrain here and you can find it in what I think of as the inspector. I'm not entirely sure if Core calls it that, but I'm used to Unity, so I think of it as an inspector. And you can also drag it in there as well. And straight away we've got a quite good looking desert. Now I believe if I press play, my character's under the ground. So I'll just fix that. To get out of play mode, by the way, you can just press equals. So I'm going to find my character, or spawn point, sorry, not my character. And as you just noticed when I press play, your Core character is automatically brought into the game. You don't have to do anything about making characters, that's done automatically. So there we go, we've got my little dude, some weird android in a hoodie for some reason, and I can run around this desert. All the movements are there, all the controls, all the sound effects, and you'll notice, you notice the feet are inverse kinematics. They're molding to where the ground is rather than just floating in the air. And also you can hear footsteps, and the footsteps are, they sound like sand. If I change that, I believe if I change that to concrete or something, just find a concrete material, I believe it'll sound different. Yeah. I'll just change that back to desert, and I'll show you another cool thing that Core does. So if I find myself a car, it doesn't need to be any particular car, but let's go for a cool looking one. So that's the other thing, is that they have ready to go objects. Like these cars have car mechanics already baked in. That little golf buggy. All right, let's go with that. So if I press play there, did I put that anywhere near where I'm stood? I don't think I did. There we go. So if I go up to this, car mechanics ready to go. And the other cool thing is if I just, there we go, it automatically does tire marks on the ground, and obviously the tire marks tie in with the material. So where's my spawn point? So finding your character in the scene, or finding an object in the scene, same as Unity, click on it in the inspector and then press F. So another thing we can do is we can find ourselves a gun. And we can just drop that gun there. And then gun mechanics, ready to go. So that's a nice overview of how easy it is to start throwing things together in this. And obviously there's a lot more. Like for example, if I just somewhere in here, UI. So in UI, somewhere in here, we've got a speedometer. Or is it in vehicles? Oh, there we go. Right, so vehicle tachometer. So if I just drag that in there, it automatically drops that there. Now you might think you don't want that on all the time, which is understandable. However, you can see it's not on all the time. And if I can find the car again that I've already lost, it only comes on when you're actually in a vehicle, and it works. And there's loads of other UI elements like this, like you can have a health bar, kill feed, and all sorts of other things. And all of this can be changed. So if I go into my inspector here and find health bar, I can mess around with the variables of the health bar. And of course, you've got lighting, and this is all, like I say, I believe this is made in Unreal, so the graphics are, you know, nice. Yeah, so that's an overview of how easy we can start throwing things together. So let's start making an actual game, and we're going to do this using one of the frameworks that they have ready to go. So you can see on the side here, we've got all these different frameworks, and I presume they'll be adding more because there's quite a limited selection of games at the minute. They're all mostly shooting games, but we also have like a dungeon crawler and a racing game, and a few top-down versions of dungeon crawlers, death matches, and capture the flag or whatever it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the dungeon crawler one. And if I just press play, you can see what we're dealing with. So straight away, our character's got a little sword, but also there's weapons over here. I can equip some weird helmet thing that makes me look a bit like the Mandalorian. And let's grab this nice big sword. So we've got portals, which all that does is just take us through to the other side. If you remember from there, I'll show you the map in a minute, but it's literally just the other side of the wall. And there he is. I thought there was a bad guy there. And we can progress through the level like you would. Oh, sneaky. So the AI is really, the AI in this one is really simple. Like I said, you can make things less simple if you like. But this is basically, the AI just stands there, and when it sees you, it goes for you. And that's it. And then I believe this portal takes you back to the lobby area, and there is a little portal over here, or a door over here, which takes you to the boss, which will absolutely wreck me because I've not done any upgrades whatsoever. And you can see there's all these pieces all over because this is a demo scene. So there's 3 different levels, each of them to culminate in a boss. The idea is you can go through the level, kill baddies, grind up, upgrade your weapons and armor, and eventually take on the bosses. Obviously this level looks a bit bland, so what we can do to change that is, first off, like I said before, we can just find ourselves some nice materials. So, I mean, we're dealing with a dungeon, so let's look for something stone-like. We don't want concrete bricks. What about bricks and mortar? Yeah, it's good enough. Right, so what we want to do next, because obviously we don't want to have to drag them out for... This floor's made of tiles, made of like these big tiles all over the place. We don't want to have to go dragging materials onto each of those. So what we can do is we can find all the ones that say floor and press enter, and that should highlight them all. And then we can drag our bricks onto there. And obviously, this makes it important to properly name anything that you put in here. I don't know if you can actually... Yeah, you can rename them. So this makes it important to properly name anything that you put in here, because obviously if you put something in there and put floor in the name, and then you use this method, you're going to end up covering things that aren't meant to be floor with floor material. Now with the walls, we want to do something a little bit different, because it's going to be a bit boring if we just put a material on the walls like this. So rather than doing that, let's change the mesh. So if we find ourselves a wall, let's just clear that search there. So we've got wall here. And if we go down somewhere, there we go. So we've got our mesh here. Now we can change that mesh. If I go looking for some models, 3D objects, let's just type wall. There we go. So I could give it a the wall of a side of a suburban house, which obviously won't look very good. Fantasy castle would be a safe bet. Fantasy castle wall. So we can drag that in there, and it immediately changes this to a much nicer looking wall, albeit one with wooden paneling. And that is because this wall has an interior and an exterior. So let's see if we can find one that's the same on both sides. I'm going to go with this one. It's got a nice brick look to it. Again, we don't want to have to do this for all of them, but fortunately for us in this template project, all the walls have been put into a wall object. And in that wall object, there's these different sections. We can just highlight all of these, find our mesh component, and just drag the wall in. So that's all the walls surrounding our main play area. We won't bother with the bosses in this one. So as you can see, we've still got all these weird blocks in the actual fighting area. So we could give those a new mesh. So for example, with this one, we could find an appropriate, like, let's just type castle and see what we've got here. So we could use something like, I don't know, one of these, but we'd have to scale it or mess with it or place more of them. There's a reason that I'm not just going to leave that there like that. I'll explain that in a minute. For now, let's try and find something that fits a bit better. There we go. So that looks a little bit more what we're going for. It's sticking out the side there, but the player's not going to be able to see that. So straight away, if I press play now, it already looks more like a proper game. Oh, and that's the other thing with core. There's persistent player memory. So any things that you've got in a particular game, any items, any stats, any coins, gems, whatever the game that you're playing keeps, they will save between games. So you don't need to worry about doing that as a developer. Core takes care of all that. So as you can see, I've loaded the game. I've still got my weird Mandalorian helmet and my big sword. So now we've got this, and it's already got colliders on. We don't need to worry about anything like that. There's no enemy there, but as soon as we step around here, there he goes. And it's precisely because of this enemy why I wasn't going to leave the little block there and not put a full wall in. And the reason for that is because the enemies do have a Navmesh. So I think if I type Navmesh, should be able to find it. So yeah, there is a Navmesh that obviously the AI needs to know for where it can go. I believe I can turn it on somewhere. So if I click on the parent Navmesh object and I click visibility force on, you can see where that Navmesh is. Now, if I had left just this little block here, then the AI would be treating this as a solid wall, even though they could clearly walk behind it. So obviously it's not a problem. You can modify the Navmesh. You don't have to leave it as it is. These are just planes, but you would have to modify the Navmesh. So I could easily just use the same one for, let's just get rid of this. Highlight that. Find the mesh object, and I could use the same model for that, and then we've got a kind of coherent look in here. So let's just turn this nav mesh off. And then for this one, maybe we'll give it a little bit of a wall with a window for some reason. Not sure why you'd have a window there, but not sure why you'd have skeletons roaming around your castle either. So there you go. And of course there's more you can do, like you can use objects. You've got your controls for moving and scaling and stuff up here, obviously. You could place other objects, try and position that. I'm not going to leave that there, obviously, because that would mean a lot of messing with the nav mesh. So it looks coherent, smooth, and it worked. Like the collisions are already there. And as you can see, the skeleton did not treat that wall like it existed at all, and that's because the skeleton is entirely following the nav mesh. So I haven't adjusted the nav mesh to compensate for this new curvy wall, so the skeleton just goes running through it. Once again, we can pick this wall and we can slap something different down there. Let's look at some of the other things that we can do. Tell you what, let's do this properly. So I'm going to exit out, and then we'll create a new one, and this will be a blank one again. And we're going to go up to our terrain generator. Desert Rocky. That's got to be close enough. Yeah, that'll do. Let's go with that. So I'm just going to get rid of the default floor, and obviously I need to move my spawn point up. So let's find a suitable material. I know, strictly speaking, granite is nothing like what I'm going for here, but it looks close enough. So if we find our Skydome, do we want nighttime? Will nighttime do? Okay, so Numpty here was just dropping Skydome on top of Skydome. You can't do that. You need to remove the old Skydome first. There. So now we've got something more like what I was going for. Nice alien world. But what we can do, and this is all of this was just to get to this point. If we go to player settings, somewhere down here we've got gravity scale. So we can drop that to, let's say, 0.4. And now we're on a planet with really low gravity. Sorry, yeah, that's the other thing, sorry. I've been demoing this in single player mode, but you can demo it in multiplayer mode, because obviously the whole thing about Core is it's sort of inherently multiplayer. Your game doesn't need to be multiplayer, but it's kind of built for that experience. So somewhere in here there's like players on, oh there we go, player online. Or player count. So if I turn on multiplayer, let's just say 2 players, just for testing purposes. So you can see we've got 2 screens here. You can't really tell at the minute because there's nothing on the screens. But once it's loaded, there'll be 2 screens, and each one of them will be a player online. So you can test multiplayer aspects of your game without having to, actually publish it and play with real people online. As you can see there, the player count at the bottom there is showing how many people is online. So yeah, that is pretty much the end of this tutorial slash showcase slash how to get started with core games. Like I say, I am being paid for this video, but in all honesty, of all these types of things that I've tried, this is by far and away the most polished, nicest to use, and has some of the games that I tried while I was messing around with it feel like, I mean, I've played worse games that were just standalone published games, so make of that what you will. There is definitely a lot of potential for this. I'd be happy to do more videos on it if that's something that you guys would like to see. Let me know in the comments. So that's all for now, and big thanks to Core Games for the opportunity to make this video, and a big thanks of course go to the Patreons. Special thanks go to the Sugar Daddy / Mama Tier Patreons, who are Dave Maldine, Reg Reed, Gabriel White, Aaron Clark, Mr. Drunken Dragon, Julian, Andrew Hansen, and Aji. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.